She was mocked by her billionaire CEO husband at a gala. 5 years later, he walked into her company begging for a job. "I'm begging you, Vivian. Please. I know I have no right to ask, but I need this job. I need any job." I leaned back in my executive chair, the Vancouver skyline stretching behind me through floor-to-ceiling windows, and let the silence hang between us. 5 years ago, this man had stood in my penthouse, wearing a designer tuxedo bought with my money, and laughed while his colleagues mocked me. He had called me incompetent in front of 43 people. He had stolen $140 million from my father's company. He had tried to destroy everything I had. And now he was begging me for an entry-level position paying $45,000 a year. Have you ever been dismissed by someone who underestimated you? Have you watched someone you loved make you feel worthless in front of everyone? What would you do if that person came crawling back? My husband laughed at me, called me incompetent, stole from my family's company, and tried to destroy everything my father built. But he made one critical mistake. He forgot whose name was actually on the deed. Hey, beautiful hearts. You're watching Cedar Light Love Stories, where every heartbeat tells a story. Don't rush away. Stay till the end, because love always has a twist you won't want to miss. Dizzy. Before we begin, subscribe, like, share, and drop a comment below, and tell us where you're watching from. Let love connect us all. "You're begging me?" I said, my voice as smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. "That's interesting, Julian, because I seem to remember you telling me that begging was beneath successful people. That was at the gala, right? Right before you told everyone I was too stupid to understand business?" His face crumpled. "Vivian, please. I was wrong. I was arrogant and cruel, and I paid for it. I lost everything. I just need a chance to survive." I picked up a pen, rolling it between my fingers. The same fingers that had trembled while holding a champagne flute as his colleagues laughed at me for 19 seconds. Yes, I had counted every single one. If you've ever been dismissed by someone who underestimated you, if you've ever watched someone you loved make you feel worthless in front of everyone who mattered, then you need to hear this story. Because what I'm about to tell you is how 19 seconds of laughter cost a billionaire CEO everything he thought he owned. And why 5 years later, I became the only person standing between him and complete ruin. Hit that like button right now and subscribe to Cedar Light Love Stories, because this journey is about to get wild. And trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. But to understand how we got here, to this moment where Julian Cross sat in my office begging for mercy, I need to take you back. Back to when I thought I had everything. Back to before I knew that the man I married was slowly stealing my entire life. My father, Chun Wei, came to Vancouver from Hong Kong with $300 in his pocket and a 9th-grade education. He worked construction, his hands bleeding through cheap gloves, saving every dollar while other immigrants spent theirs on comfort. He told me once, while we sat in his first small office above a dumpling restaurant, that patience and precision were the only weapons a poor man had against a world designed to keep him poor. 28 years later, he owned that entire city block, and 15 blocks more, and a technology division, and a venture capital fund. Vivian Enterprises became a multi-billion-dollar holdings company, and my father never forgot where he came from. Every employee got benefits from day one. Every contract was honored to the letter. Every partnership was built on handshakes that meant something. When he died suddenly of a heart attack 3 years into my marriage to Julian, I inherited everything. The penthouse with the view of the water. The company with 1,700 employees. The legacy of a man who had built something that mattered. I also inherited grief so heavy I could barely breathe. That's when Julian positioned himself as my savior. We had met at a business conference 2 years before my father's death. Julian Cross, Harvard MBA, rising star at a consulting firm, all confident smiles and strategic thinking. He pursued me with the focus of someone executing a business plan. Flowers every week. Thoughtful questions about the company. Admiration for my father's accomplishments. My father had been polite to Julian but never warm. I remember asking him why, sitting in his study while he reviewed contracts. "That man looks at you like you're an acquisition target. Not a daughter," he had said, not looking up from his papers. "Be careful, Vivian. Some men marry the woman. Some men marry what she has. Know the difference. I thought he was being overprotective. I thought Julian's interest in the business meant he valued what mattered to me. I thought a lot of things that turned out to be catastrophically wrong. When my father died, Julian was there for everything. The funeral arrangements, the endless paperwork, the board meetings I couldn't face. He held my hand through the grief and slowly, so slowly I didn't notice, he took hold of everything else too. 6 months after the funeral, he proposed. We were married in a small ceremony that felt more like a corporate merger than a celebration. I was too numb to notice. Within a year, Julian had installed himself as CEO of Vivian Enterprises. I became Chief Creative Officer, a title that sounded important but meant nothing. He brought in his Harvard friends to fill the board. Marcus Chun became VP of Operations. Brad Whitmore took over finance. Katerina Volkov, young and blonde and always smiling at Julian's jokes, became creative director. My name was still on everything legally. I owned 67% of the company as majority shareholder. But Julian spoke to investors about his company, his vision, his transformation of a regional real estate business into a tech-forward empire. And I let him, because I was grieving, because I thought he was helping, because I had started to believe his subtle implications that I wasn't capable of running my father's company alone. The penthouse changed too. Julian ripped out my father's warm hardwood floors and installed cold marble. Everything comfortable was replaced with expensive emptiness. Designer furniture you couldn't actually relax in. Art chosen to impress rather than enjoy. Even the coffee maker was replaced with an elaborate Italian espresso machine that required a manual to operate. This is what success looks like, he told me when I hesitated at the cost. Your father built something incredible, but he thought small. We're going to think bigger. I should have heard the weir and understood it meant him. I should have noticed that bigger meant riskier. I should have paid attention to a lot of things. But I was busy playing the role he had written for me. The grieving daughter who needed protecting. The wife who supported her brilliant husband. The woman who showed up to events in the right dress and said the right things and never, ever questioned the business decisions. Until the night of the product launch gala when I finally broke the script. It was a Thursday in December, exactly 3 years and 2 months into our marriage. Julian had organized a celebration at the Fairmont Hotel for the launch of some blockchain integration system I didn't fully understand. 43 people attended. Every board member. Key investors from Singapore and Tokyo. His entire executive team. Everyone who mattered in Vancouver's tech and finance circles. I wore a black Saint Laurent dress that had cost $4,000. Julian had chosen it that morning, laying it out on the bed with matching heels. Wear this tonight, he had said. These investors are conservative. They like seeing a successful man with a woman who knows her place. I should have thrown the dress in his face. Instead, I put it on. The ballroom sparkled with crystal and candlelight. Everything was perfect, from the champagne to the hors d'oeuvres to the jazz quartet playing softly in the corner. I stood near the windows, holding a glass I wasn't drinking from, listening to Julian hold court with a group of investors. He was in his element, confident, charismatic, painting a picture of unlimited growth and boundless opportunity. I had heard the pitch so many times I could recite it. Then Marcus approached Julian with a folder. The Soul deal is ready for signatures. Just need Vivian to sign off on the transfer, and we're golden. I hadn't seen any paperwork about Soul. I moved closer. What Soul deal? I asked. Julian's smile tightened slightly. The acquisition we discussed, darling. The tech startup. $27 million for a revolutionary AI platform. We didn't discuss anything, I said. And $27 million is a significant amount. I'd like to see the due diligence first. The conversation around us began to quiet. People sensed tension the way animals sense storms coming. Julian laughed, but it had an edge. Vivian, we don't need to bore everyone with operational details. It's not boring, I said, my voice steady. It's my father's money. Our company's money. $27 million for a startup with no revenue seems risky. I'd like to see the business plan, the market analysis, the founder's background. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. The founder is Chad Morrison, my roommate from Harvard. He's brilliant. This is a ground floor opportunity. That's not due diligence, I said. That's a recommendation from someone with a conflict of interest. Julian's face was turning red. Vivian, you're embarrassing yourself. I'm asking reasonable questions about a major expenditure. The room had gone almost completely silent. The jazz quartet was still playing, but every conversation had stopped. 43 people were watching us. Julian set down his drink with deliberate force. This is exactly the problem. You don't understand how business works at this level. This is why I have to make these decisions. I understand that $27 million is a lot of money to give to someone's roommate without proper vetting. I said. That's when he said it. The words that changed everything. You're embarrassing yourself, Vivian. Nobody wants to hear your opinions about the acquisition. This is business, not your little hobby projects. Marcus laughed first. Then Brad. Then Katerina, standing near the bar in a dress almost identical to mine. Her hand covering her mouth, but her eyes dancing with amusement. Then the investors, uncomfortable but following the social cues of the powerful man in the room. The laughter lasted exactly 19 seconds. I know because I watched the crystal chandelier above us swing slightly from the vibration, and I counted each movement like a metronome marking the death of my marriage. Stop acting like you understand complex financial instruments, Julian continued, emboldened by the laughter. You don't get to question decisions made by people who actually know what they're doing. More laughter. Smaller now, but still there. Still echoing off the walls of that beautiful room that suddenly felt like a cage. I stood there in my $4,000 dress, holding my champagne, and something inside me went very, very quiet. Not broken. Not defeated. Just absolutely clear. I set my glass down on the nearest table. The click of crystal on marble sounded loud in the renewed murmur of conversation. You're right, I said, my voice carrying across the room. I don't understand how business works at your level. Julian smiled, thinking he had one. I don't understand how someone steals from the company their wife built. I don't understand how someone commits fraud and calls it innovation. I don't understand a lot of things about your business practices, Julian. But I'm going to learn. His smile faltered. I walked out of that ballroom with my head high and my hands steady. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I walked through the lobby, through the doors, into the December cold, and I pulled out my phone. The first call was to Diana Reeves, the corporate attorney whose card I had been carrying in my wallet for 6 weeks. Ever since I had noticed irregularities in the quarterly reports. Ever since I had started having that sick feeling that something was very, very wrong. She answered on the second ring. Diana, this is Vivian Cross. I'm ready to move forward with everything we discussed. Her voice sharpened immediately. What happened? My husband just humiliated me in front of our entire board and key investors. He's pushing through a $27 million deal that smells like fraud. And I'm done pretending I don't see what's happening. Where are you? Parking garage of the Fairmont Hotel. Stay there. I'm 20 minutes away. Don't go back inside. Don't talk to anyone. And Vivian, whatever you're feeling right now, channel it. We're going to need that fury. I sat in my car, a Mercedes Julian had insisted I needed because it looked successful, and I waited. The parking garage was cold and echoed with the sounds of other people's departures. Normal people leaving normal events. Not women whose worlds had just fractured into before and after. My phone buzzed with texts. Julian asking where I went. Marcus saying I had made everyone uncomfortable. Katerina with a passive-aggressive hope you're okay. I ignored all of them. Instead, I opened my email and pulled up the reports I had been quietly reviewing. The ones that showed expenditures that didn't quite make sense. The acquisitions that seemed overpriced. The partnerships with companies that barely existed. I had been documenting for weeks without fully admitting to myself what I was documenting. Playing the obedient wife while my instincts screamed that something was deeply wrong. Diana arrived in a black BMW, all business in a charcoal suit despite the late hour. She slid into my passenger seat and immediately pulled out a tablet. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. The sole deal. The pattern of expensive acquisitions that seemed to evaporate. Julian's increasing control over every aspect of the company. The way he had slowly isolated me from operational decisions while keeping my name on everything for legitimacy. She listened, taking notes, her expression growing darker. "How much access do you have to financial records?" she asked. "Everything. I'm majority shareholder. Legally, I can access anything." "Good. We're going to need forensic accounting. Someone who specializes in corporate fraud. I know exactly who to call." She made a phone call right there, speaker on so I could hear. Thomas Park answered, his voice gravelly with sleep. "This better be important, Diana. This corporate embezzlement, possibly over 100 million. Timeline is approximately 2 years. I need a full analysis by Monday." Thomas's voice sharpened. "I'll clear my schedule. Send me everything you have." Diana looked at me. "Can you get me full access to the company's financial systems tonight?" I pulled out my laptop. My login credentials still worked. Julian had never thought to restrict my access because he had never imagined I would look. "I'm in," I said. Diana connected her tablet to my laptop and began downloading files. 2 years of transactions, expense reports, acquisition documents, partnership agreements. Everything flowing from Vivian Enterprises into the digital void. While the files transferred, she asked the hard questions. "Are you prepared for what this might reveal? If Julian has been stealing, it's not going to be small amounts. Men like him don't skim. They loot. I want to know everything. If we find what I think we're going to find, there's no going back. This won't be a quiet divorce. This will be criminal charges, public scandal, complete destruction of his reputation." "Good," I said. The word came out harder than I intended. He just destroyed mine in front of everyone who matters in this city. "Turnabout seems fair." Diana smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a litigator who had just been handed a winning case. The file transfer completed. Gigabytes of financial data, now in Diana's possession. "Go home," she said. "Act normal. Don't let him know anything has changed. I'll have preliminary findings by tomorrow afternoon. Thomas works fast when he smells blood. What do I do until then?" "You do exactly what you've been doing. You play the role he expects. You make his coffee. You smile. You sign nothing, but you don't make him suspicious. Can you do that?" I thought about my father, about the patience and precision he had taught me, about how he had smiled at competitors right up until the moment he outmaneuvered them. "Yes," I said, "I can do that." I drove home through the empty streets. Vancouver at night all reflected lights and quiet power. The penthouse was dark when I arrived. Julian was still at the gala, probably celebrating his public victory over his inconvenient wife. I went to our bedroom and carefully hung up the black Saint Laurent dress. The dress I had worn to my humiliation. I would never wear it again, but I didn't throw it away. I wanted to remember exactly how this felt, how small he had tried to make me, how completely he had underestimated me. Then I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I went into my father's study, the one room in the penthouse Julian hadn't redecorated because I had locked it and refused to give him the key. Everything was exactly as my father had left it. His desk with the worn leather chair, his books on strategy and negotiation, his photographs of the buildings he had constructed with his own hands before he could afford to hire others. And on the wall, his favorite quote, calligraphed in Chinese and English: "Patience is not passive. It is concentrated strength." I sat in his chair and I waited for my husband to come home. He arrived at 11:47. I heard him in the hallway, his footsteps unsteady from champagne and victory. He didn't come looking for me. He went straight to the bedroom, probably assuming I was asleep or sulking. I stayed in my father's study until 2 in the morning, reading through emails on my phone. Messages from Diana confirming Thomas had started the analysis. Messages from my own research into Chad Morrison, Julian's Harvard roommate who supposedly ran a revolutionary AI startup. Chad Morrison had 2 previous failed companies. One in Boston that had folded amid investor complaints. One in Chicago that was under investigation for securities fraud. The sole startup had no website, no product, no employees besides Chad himself. It was a shell. A $27 million theft dressed up as innovation. I forwarded everything to Diana and finally went to bed. Julian was asleep, sprawled across the Egyptian cotton sheets I had bought with my year-end bonus. He didn't stir when I lay down on the far edge of the mattress, as far from him as I could get without falling off. I didn't sleep. I planned. Morning came with pale winter light filtering through windows Julian had insisted remain uncurtained. He believed waking with the sun was a success habit. I believed privacy mattered more, but like everything else, his preference had won. I got up at 5:30, before he woke, and went to the kitchen. The espresso machine gleamed in the dim light, all chrome and complicated Italian engineering. I made his coffee exactly the way he liked it. Double shot, oat milk foam, precisely 160 degrees. I had made this exact drink 1,247 times since our wedding. I had counted once, during a particularly bad week when counting something felt like the only control I had. This would be the last time. My hands were steady as I measured the beans, as I steamed the milk, as I poured it into his favorite mug. The one that said "Innovate or Die" in minimalist sans serif font. Julian emerged from the bedroom at 6:15, right on schedule. He maintained his routines with religious precision. Personal trainer at 7. Shower at 8. First meeting at 9:30. He walked past me without speaking, picked up his coffee, and scrolled through his phone. I waited. Finally, without looking up, he said, "You embarrassed me last night." Not an apology. Not a question about why I had left. Just an accusation. "I'm sorry you felt embarrassed," I said. The non-apology deliberate. "You made me look like I can't control my own wife in front of key investors. Do you have any idea how that affects my credibility?" His credibility. Not our relationship. Not my feelings. His image. "I was asking questions about a significant financial commitment," I said carefully. "You were questioning my judgment in front of people who need to believe I know what I'm doing." He set down his coffee with controlled force. "This is why I don't involve you in major decisions, Vivian. You don't understand the nuances. Then explain them to me. Show me the due diligence on the sole deal." His jaw tightened. "We've been over this. Chad is brilliant. The opportunity is time-sensitive. We need to move fast. Then you should have moved fast on proper vetting." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something in his expression shifted. Annoyance mixed with something else. Calculation. "The contracts are being sent to you this morning. I need your signature by 5. What if I want legal to review them first?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw him trying to assess how much of a problem I was going to be. "Legal already reviewed them. This is just a formality. You're majority shareholder, so your signature is required for transfers over 25 million. Sign the papers, Vivian. Don't make this difficult." There it was. The implicit threat. Don't make this difficult or else. Or else what? Or else more public humiliation. Or else being pushed further from my own company. Or else he would finally say out loud what he had been implying for 3 years, that I was incompetent and he was the only thing standing between me and failure. "I'll look at them when they arrive," I said. He studied me for another moment, then seemed to decide I was manageable. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, a gesture of ownership disguised as affection. "We're something nice tonight. We're having dinner with the Singapore investors. I need you present and pleasant. Present and pleasant. Like a decorative object. Like furniture that matched the marble floors." "Of course," I said. He left for his morning workout, and I stood alone in the kitchen I had paid for, in the penthouse I owned, in the life he had slowly stolen while I grieved. My phone buzzed. "Diana, preliminary findings are worse than we thought. Can you meet at 2? I'll be there." I spent the morning preparing. Not for dinner with investors. For war. At exactly 2 o'clock, I walked into Diana's office in a building downtown, glass and steel reaching toward a sky-threatening rain. She had a corner office overlooking the harbor, all understated power and legal credentials covering one wall. Thomas Park was already there, a man in his 50s with tired eyes and the energy of someone who had seen every possible way humans could steal from each other. Diana gestured to a chair. "Sit down, Vivian. You're going to want to be sitting for this." Thomas pulled up financial charts on a large screen. Numbers and graphs that looked like abstract art until he started explaining. I've analyzed 26 months of transactions from Vivian Enterprises. What I found is systematic corporate fraud operating at a level that requires significant sophistication and multiple co-conspirators. He clicked through slides, each one worse than the last. 23 separate acquisitions, partnerships, or investments. Combined value of approximately $140 million. Every single one follows the same pattern. Vivian Enterprises pays significantly over market value for an asset. The money flows through a series of shell companies. Within 6 months, the asset either fails, pivots, or dissolves. The money ends up in offshore accounts registered in the Cayman Islands, Singapore, and Luxembourg. Show her the ownership records, Diana said. Thomas pulled up corporate registration documents. The shell companies had different names, different registered agents, but the beneficial ownership kept appearing in familiar patterns. Your VP of Operations, Marcus Chun, is a partner or shareholder in 7 of these entities. Your creative director, Katerina Volkov, is a registered agent for 4 offshore accounts. And your husband, Julian Cross, is connected to every single transaction through either direct ownership, power of attorney, or family trusts. Family trusts? I asked. He has a trust registered in Luxembourg under his mother's maiden name. It's technically legal, but it's clearly designed to hide assets. $18 million have flowed into that trust from Vivian Enterprises transactions. I felt cold. Not shocked exactly. More like the confirmation of something I had known in my bones but hadn't wanted to believe. How much total? I asked. Estimated theft over 26 months is $140 million, Thomas said. But that's just what I can trace so far. If this pattern extends back further, the number could be significantly higher. Diana leaned forward. The sole deal? It's the exit strategy. $27 million to a fake company, and based on communications I've started pulling, they were planning something bigger. Bankruptcy protection, liquidation of assets, complete dissolution of Vivian Enterprises within 6 months. She pulled up emails recovered from Julian's company account. Apparently he had been careless, assuming no one would ever look Julian to Marcus. The widow's completely manageable. Keep feeding her the wellness narrative and she'll sign anything. Marcus to Julian. Singapore investors are asking questions about ownership structure. Need to accelerate timeline before she gets curious. Katerina to Julian. Can't wait to celebrate properly once the sole deal closes. Thinking Maldives for 2 weeks? Each message was a knife. Not because they hurt, because they proved exactly how stupid he thought I was. There's more, Diana said quietly. She pulled up security footage, time-stamped from various dates over the past 6 months. Every Tuesday, 1:15 in the afternoon. The footage showed the lobby of my building. Katerina entering, checking her phone, heading to the elevator. 10 minutes later, Julian entering separately, also heading up. Your doorman confirmed it, Diana said. Every Tuesday while you're at Pilates. 90 minutes like clockwork. Service elevator so the regular residents wouldn't see. So he was stealing my money and sleeping with his accomplice in my bed. I should have felt devastated, betrayed, destroyed. Instead, I felt absolutely clear. What are my options? I asked. Diana smiled. Finally, the question I was waiting for. Diana pulled out a legal pad and drew a simple flowchart. At the top, she wrote my name. Below it, all the ways I could destroy Julian Cross. Legally, you have multiple paths. Criminal prosecution for fraud and embezzlement. He's looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Civil suits to recover stolen assets. Divorce with fault, which in this jurisdiction means he gets nothing and owes you everything. She drew another branch on her chart. But there's a more elegant solution. You're a majority shareholder. 67% of Vivian Enterprises is in your name personally. Julian has an employment contract as CEO, but 0 ownership stake. He positioned himself as your representative, but legally, he's just an employee. Thomas nodded, catching on. Emergency shareholder meeting to remove CEO for cause. It's clean, it's fast, and it's completely within your rights. And once he's removed, Diana continued, You freeze his assets pending investigation. You terminate his access to everything. Then you decide whether to pursue criminal charges or simply let him drown in professional ruin. Both, I said. The word came out hard and certain. Criminal and professional. I want him to face every single consequence. Diana's smile was sharp as broken glass. Then we move fast. Emergency board meeting, tomorrow night. I'll notify every board member that this is mandatory attendance for urgent corporate governance issues. We don't tell Julian anything. Won't the board members warn him? I asked. Most of them are his friends. Diana shook her head. Corporate board members have fiduciary duties that supersede friendship. When we tell them we have evidence of fraud, they'll choose protecting themselves over protecting him. Trust me. Thomas started packing up his evidence. I'll have a full presentation ready. Charts, transaction flows, the emails, everything. When that board sees what he's done, they'll vote him out to save themselves from liability. What do I do until tomorrow? I asked. You go home, Diana said. You act exactly as you have been. You're the grieving widow who doesn't understand business. Remember? That's the role he expects. Play it one more day. And tonight, the dinner with Singapore investors? You go. You wear whatever he told you to wear. You smile. You're present and pleasant. And you watch him perform, knowing that in 24 hours it's over. I left Diana's office with a folder of evidence in my bag and a clarity I hadn't felt in 3 years. The rain had started, Vancouver disappearing into gray mist, but I felt sharper than I had in months. At home, I found Julian in the study that used to be a guest room before he claimed it. He was on a video call, laughing with someone I didn't recognize. When he saw me, he ended the call quickly. Where were you? He asked. Pilates, then lunch with Rebecca. The lie came smoothly. My old college roommate, safely in Toronto and unconnected to any of this. He accepted it without question. Of course he did. I was predictable, manageable, exactly where he expected me to be. Did you review the sole contracts? Not yet. They only arrived an hour ago. His jaw tightened. Vivian, I need those signatures today. I'll look at them after dinner. I'm not signing something worth $27 million without reading it. There's nothing to read. It's standard acquisition paperwork. Then it won't take me long to review. We stared at each other, and I saw him calculating whether to push harder or back off. He chose retreat, probably assuming he could pressure me later. Fine. But we need to leave for dinner in 2 hours. Wear the navy dress, the one from Valentino. I went to our bedroom and pulled out the dress he wanted. $12,000 of Italian design, bought with my quarterly dividend while he complained that I spent too much on employee benefits. I put it on and looked at myself in the mirror. Present and pleasant. One more performance. One last night of playing the role he had written for me. The dinner was at Hawksworth Restaurant. All understated elegance and Vancouver's elite. The Singapore investors were already seated when we arrived. 3 men in expensive suits, their assistants hovering nearby with tablets and phones. Julian was magnificent, charming, confident, painting pictures of unlimited growth. He talked about the sole acquisition like it was visionary instead of fraudulent. He mentioned blockchain and AI and disruption, all the words that made investors lean in with interest. And he introduced me as his wife, his partner, the heart of Vivian Enterprises, as if he hadn't humiliated me in front of 43 people 24 hours earlier. I smiled. I nodded. I answered questions about my father's legacy with practiced grace. I was exactly what he needed me to be. Under the table, my phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Everything is set. Board meeting tomorrow, 6 p.m. Every member confirmed. He has no idea. I excused myself to the restroom and replied, I'll be there. When I returned to the table, Julian was showing the investors projected revenue charts. Numbers that looked impressive until you understood they were based on fake companies and stolen money. Your husband is quite brilliant, one of the investors said to me. You must be very proud. I am, I said, meeting Julian's eyes across the table. He's definitely going to get everything he deserves. Julian smiled, thinking it was a compliment. We left the restaurant at 10:30. Julian was euphoric, certain he had secured the Singapore investment. In the car, he actually took my hand. "You were perfect tonight," he said. "This is who we are when we work together." I let him hold my hand and said nothing. 20 hours until the board meeting. 20 hours until everything he thought he had built came crashing down. At home, he wanted to celebrate. I pleaded exhaustion. He was annoyed but too pleased with himself to push. He fell asleep quickly, his breathing deep and satisfied. I lay awake, counting down the hours. The next day crawled past like wading through concrete. Julian left early for meetings. I spent the morning preparing. Not clothes or makeup. Evidence. I printed copies of everything Thomas had found. Every fraudulent transaction. Every email. Every shell company registration. I created folders for each board member, organized and indexed. Diana called at noon. "How are you holding up?" "Steady," I said. "Ready." "Good. Because tonight is going to be intense. He's going to fight. He's going to make promises, threats, try to flip the narrative. Stay calm. Stay focused, and let the evidence speak." "I will." "One more thing," Diana said. "This will be public. Once we terminate him, once we file criminal complaints, this will be in every newspaper. Your private life will become public scandal. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about my father, about building something that mattered, about choosing truth over comfort. "Yes," I said. "I'm prepared." I arrived at the Vivian Enterprises Tower at 5:30. The building my father had constructed from nothing, now reaching 60 floors into the Vancouver sky. My name was on the lobby wall in steel letters 3 feet high. The boardroom on the 42nd floor was already filling when I arrived. Diana was there, along with Thomas and a woman I didn't recognize. "This is Nadia Okonkwo," Diana said. "Cybersecurity expert." She recovered the emails and digital evidence. Nadia nodded. "Everything is authenticated and admissible. He can't claim it's fake or fabricated." The board members arrived one by one. Margaret Wu, my father's original CFO, now semi-retired but still on the board. David Park, who had known my father since the construction days. Others Julian had installed, looking confused about the emergency meeting. At 5:55, Julian arrived. He looked annoyed, checking his watch. "What's this about?" he asked, scanning the room. "I have a call with Tokyo at 6:30. "Please sit down," I said from the head of the table. From my father's chair that I had let Julian occupy for 3 years. He froze, noticing for the first time where I was sitting. Noticing Diana and Thomas and Nadia with their evidence binders. Noticing the security guards posted at the doors. "Vivian, what is this?" "Sit down, Julian. We have important matters to discuss." He sat, but slowly, his expression cycling between confusion and calculation. At exactly 6 p.m., I called the meeting to order. This emergency meeting of Vivian Enterprises Board of Directors is now in session. The purpose of this meeting is to address evidence of systematic fraud, embezzlement, and corporate malfeasance by our current CEO, Julian Cross. The room went completely silent. Julian's face drained of color. "This is ridiculous," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Vivian, whatever you think you've found." "I haven't found anything," I interrupted. "I hired forensic accountants and cybersecurity experts who found $140 million in fraudulent transactions over 26 months. Every acquisition you championed was a theft vehicle. Every partnership was a laundering scheme." Diana began distributing evidence folders to each board member. Julian tried to stand, but the security guards moved slightly, and he sat back down. Thomas pulled up the financial charts on the massive screen. 23 separate transactions, all following the same pattern. Overpay for worthless assets, funnel money through shell companies, end up in offshore accounts controlled by Julian Cross, Marcus Chen, and Katerina Volkov. The board members flipped through their folders, faces growing darker with each page. "This is manufactured," Julian said, his voice rising. "This is a vindictive wife who's upset about business decisions she doesn't understand." Nadia pulled up the emails, his own words glowing on the screen. Julian to Marcus. "The widow's completely manageable. Keep feeding her the wellness narrative and she'll sign anything." Someone gasped. I think it was Margaret. Marcus to Julian. Need to accelerate timeline before she gets curious. Katerina to Julian. Can't wait to celebrate properly once soul deal closes. Every email was timestamped, authenticated, irrefutable. Julian's expression shifted from denial to desperation. These are out of context. You're twisting normal business communications into something sinister. Thomas pulled up the shell company registrations. Your name appears as beneficial owner or power of attorney on 12 separate entities. $18 million sit in a Luxembourg trust under your mother's maiden name. Money that came directly from Vivian Enterprises. Where's Marcus? One of the board members asked, noticing his absence. Nadia answered. Marcus Chun was arrested by federal authorities 2 hours ago. So was Katerina Volkov. They're both facing charges of conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. Julian's face went from pale to gray. You can't do this. I'm the CEO. I've built relationships, brought in revenue. You're an employee, Diana said, her voice sharp as a scalpel, with an employment contract that explicitly prohibits fraud and self-dealing. You violated every fiduciary duty while serving at the pleasure of the majority shareholder. She gestured to me, who is terminating your employment effective immediately. The board has to vote, Julian said desperately, looking around the table for allies. This requires a vote. I pulled out the corporate bylaws. Actually, termination of a CEO for cause can be executed by majority shareholder with board notification, not approval. But let's vote anyway. All in favor of removing Julian Cross as CEO for cause, based on evidence of fraud and breach of fiduciary duty? 12 hands rose. Every single board member, even the ones he had installed, even his Harvard friends. Not a single abstention. Motion carries unanimously, I said, feeling each word like freedom. Julian, your employment is terminated immediately. Your access to all company systems, accounts, and properties is revoked. Your company credit cards are canceled. Your equity compensation is forfeit. And your personal assets are frozen pending criminal investigation. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. Vivian, please, let's talk about this privately. There's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, I said, standing to face him, was yours. You misunderstood who owned this company. You misunderstood what I was capable of. And you misunderstood what happens when you steal from someone who's been quietly documenting everything. Security moved toward him, professional and firm. You'll regret this, he hissed as they flanked him. I made you. This company was nothing before I transformed it. This company, I said, my voice steady and clear, was built by my father over 30 years. You've been here for 3, and you spent that time stealing what you were too mediocre to build yourself. As security escorted him toward the elevator, he made one final desperate attempt. I'll destroy you in court. I'll take everything. Diana laughed, actually laughed. With what legal team? Your assets are frozen. With what credibility? We're filing criminal complaints with federal authorities tonight. With what money? Every account you thought was hidden, we found. The elevator doors closed on his face. Shock and rage frozen in equal measure. The boardroom remained silent for exactly 7 seconds. Then Margaret Wu began to applaud. The sound built, 12 people recognizing not just corporate victory but justice. Your father, Margaret said, her eyes bright with tears, would be so proud. Not just that you saved his company, but how you did it. With intelligence, preparation, and perfect timing. Before we head into what happened over the next 5 years, I need you to pause and comment below. Would you have given him a second chance? Would you have handled this differently? Because what Vivian does next will surprise you. And make sure you're subscribed to Cedar Light Love Stories, because the transformation that happens over 5 years is absolutely incredible. The next 3 weeks were a controlled demolition of everything Julian had built on lies. His arrest made the front page of the Vancouver Sun. The photograph showed him in handcuffs, his usual confidence replaced by genuine fear. The headline read, former CEO arrested in $140 million fraud scheme. Marcus and Katerina cooperated immediately, offering testimony in exchange for reduced sentences. Their lawyers understood they had no defense against the evidence. The sole deal, which I had stopped hours before closing, was exposed as part of an international fraud ring. Chad Morrison, Julian's supposed Harvard roommate, was actually a con artist with outstanding warrants in 3 countries. By stopping the transaction, I had saved not just $27 million but the entire company from criminal entanglement. I restructured Vivian Enterprises with surgical precision. New board members selected for expertise rather than connections. A new CFO with impeccable credentials. Complete audit of every transaction from the past 5 years. We recovered $68 million of the stolen money. The rest was gone, spent on Julian's lifestyle, his mistress, his appearance of success. The penthouse underwent its own transformation. I ripped out the cold marble and restored my father's hardwood floors. The minimalist furniture was replaced with pieces that were comfortable, lived in. My father's paintings came out of storage. The space became mine again. Warm, real. A home instead of a showroom. 3 weeks after the board meeting, Katerina showed up at my building. Out on bail, wearing jeans instead of designer clothes, her arrogance completely gone. "I know I have no right," she said when I agreed to see her in the lobby. "But I wanted to apologize. Not for legal reasons. Because what we did was wrong." "How old are you?" I asked. 26. Young enough to be manipulated, though not young enough to escape responsibility. "He told you I was the problem, didn't he?" I said. "That I didn't deserve what I had." She nodded, tears streaming. "He said you'd gotten everything handed to you, that you didn't work, didn't contribute, that he was the one actually running the company while you spent his money." "I have 3 graduate degrees," I said quietly. "I worked in my father's company since I was 19. Julian's story about me was a lie designed to justify theft." "I know that now," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Sorry doesn't restore what was stolen. But truth has value. I pulled out Diana's card. "My attorney is building the criminal case. If you testify honestly about Julian's operation, she'll advocate for reduced charges." She took the card with shaking hands and left. I watched her go, feeling something unexpected. Not sympathy exactly, but recognition. Julian had sold us both false narratives. Mine about my incompetence. Hers about her entitlement. Julian's trial began 4 months later. Federal court, 3 counts of fraud, 2 counts of embezzlement, 1 count of conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming. He was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. The judge called his crimes a profound betrayal of trust and personal relationships. With credit for time served and good behavior, he was released after 5 years. 5 years during which my life transformed completely. Year 1, I took the CEO role officially. Not as Julian's replacement, but as the leader I had always been capable of becoming. The company's first annual gala under my leadership focused on employees and community. Scholarships for children of immigrant families, honoring my father's journey. Donations to programs supporting women in business. I wore red that night, the color of power and new beginnings. Revenue increased 17% in the first year after cutting Julian's fraudulent projects. Employee satisfaction jumped 40 points after I restored benefits. 3 major legitimate partnerships were finalized with companies that actually had products and revenue. Year 2, Vivian Enterprises expanded into sustainable technology. Real innovation, not buzzwords covering theft. I was featured in Forbes under the headline "The CEO Who Took Back Her Empire." I started dating again. Nothing serious at first. Just remembering what it felt like to be valued instead of controlled. Year 3, the company became an industry leader. I launched a mentorship program for women in business. I spoke at conferences about corporate governance and fraud prevention. My story became a case study in business schools. I also started therapy, really dealing with the grief I had buried under Julian's manipulation. Rediscovering who I was beyond someone's wife or someone's daughter. Year 4, Vivian Enterprises was worth 3 times what it had been under Julian. International expansion done right with actual due diligence. I met someone, a partner in the true sense. Someone who valued collaboration over control. Year 5, the company was a powerhouse. 60 floors of legitimate success. I had become the leader my father envisioned, but also myself. Not just preserving his legacy, but evolving it. I started something unexpected, a support group for women leaving destructive marriages. We called it the Lock Club, for women learning to control their own doors, both literal and metaphorical. Margaret Wu joined as a co-facilitator, sharing her own story from 40 years earlier. We should write a book, she suggested one afternoon. Call it Changing the Locks. While I was building, Julian was falling. His 5 years in federal prison stripped away everything. His confidence, his connections, his belief that charm could substitute for character. He emerged to a world that had moved on. No job prospects, convicted felon and known fraud. His Harvard friends had distanced themselves. His mother visited once, then stopped. He lived in a studio apartment working food service, burning through the little money from prison jobs. Multiple job rejections in his field. No one would hire a CFO who had stolen $140 million. Pride prevented him from accepting manual labor. Desperation eventually made him consider the unthinkable. Someone mentioned that Vivian Enterprises was hiring entry-level positions in financial analysis. It became his last option. Beg for a job from the woman he had destroyed. The ultimate humiliation he had to swallow to survive. And that's how, 5 years after I had him removed in handcuffs, Julian Cross stood in my reception area wearing a cheap suit, holding a resume printed at the library, applying for a $45,000 job. The receptionist recognized his name and immediately called my executive assistant. Julian Cross is in the lobby, she said, her voice uncertain. Applying for the analyst position. I was in my office with Diana, who was now my general counsel. We had been reviewing quarterly reports when the call came. This I have to see, Diana said. I could have had security remove him, could have ignored his application entirely. But something in me needed to see him, needed to understand what 5 years had done to the man who had tried to destroy me. Send him up, I said. I'll interview him myself. Diana raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? He made me feel worthless in front of everyone, I said. Now he'll understand what worthless actually means. The elevator ride from the lobby to the 60th floor takes 90 seconds. I imagine Julian standing there watching the floors tick by, each one displaying different divisions of the company he had tried to steal, each one proof of everything he had lost. He waited in the executive reception for 10 minutes. I let him wait. Let him see the photos on the walls of me with world leaders, industry titans receiving awards. Let him understand how thoroughly I had succeeded without him. Finally, my assistant called him in. He walked into my office and our eyes met. His held shame, desperation, defeat. Mine held calm, controlled certainty. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. The subordinate position. Mr. Cross, I said, deliberately formal. I see you've applied for our entry-level financial analyst position. His voice cracked when he spoke. Yes. I know I'm probably not what you're looking for, but I need work. Any work. Walk me through your resume. You have an MBA from Harvard. Where have you worked since graduation? He had to say it. Had to admit it out loud. I've been unable to secure employment in my field due to legal issues. I played naive, forcing him to explain. What kind of legal issues? Corporate fraud. Embezzlement. I served 5 years in federal prison. I leaned back, letting the silence stretch. And where did you commit this fraud? Here, he whispered. At this company. I see. And whom did you defraud? His voice was barely audible. You. I defrauded you. I stood, walked to the windows overlooking Vancouver, the city my father had helped build, the skyline that had watched my fall and my rise. So you stole $140 million from this company, I said, publicly humiliated its owner, attempted to destroy her father's legacy, slept with your accomplice in her bed, and now you're asking that same person for a job. I know I have no right, he said, and I heard tears in his voice. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I've served my time. I've lost everything. I just need a chance to survive. I turned from the window to face him. 5 years ago, you laughed at me in front of 43 people. 19 seconds. I counted every single one while my world fell apart. You made me feel worthless, incompetent, like I didn't deserve what my father built. Vivian, I'm so sorry. You told everyone I was the problem. Too emotional, too controlling, too stupid to understand business. But the truth was always the opposite, wasn't it? You were the incompetent one. You couldn't build anything yourself, so you married someone who already had something and tried to steal it. I was arrogant, cruel, criminal. I destroyed everything good in my life because I couldn't handle that you were better than me. His admission hung in the air between us. Diana watched from her chair, curious what I would do. I returned to my desk and pulled out a folder. An employment contract I had prepared that morning, after learning he had applied. This is an employment contract, I said. Entry-level financial analyst. $45,000 a year. No benefits for the first year. You'll report to someone 15 years younger than you. You'll be in a cubicle on the 12th floor. You'll have zero decision-making authority. You'll be subject to random financial audits. One mistake, one violation, and you're terminated immediately. Julian stared at me, shock replacing despair. You're giving me the job? I'm giving you a chance. Not because you deserve it, but because I've learned something you never understood. That real power isn't in destruction. It's in choosing mercy when you could choose revenge. My father built this company on second chances. He came to this country with nothing and people gave him opportunities he hadn't earned yet. I won't destroy his legacy by becoming someone who kicks people when they're down, even if they kicked me first. But understand this, Julian. You're not special here. You're not the former CEO getting his company back. You're an entry-level employee who will work harder than everyone else to prove you've changed. You'll be watched. You'll be tested. And if you slip even once, you're done. I slid the contract across the desk. Sign it or leave. Your choice. His hands shook as he picked up the pen. He read through the contract, every clause that stripped away his ego and reduced him to exactly what he was. Someone starting over with nothing but a chance. He signed. Welcome to Vivian Enterprises, I said. Report to HR on Monday at 8 a.m. They'll process your paperwork and assign you to your supervisor. Thank you, he whispered. I won't let you down. I didn't respond to that. Just nodded toward the door. Diana will show you out. After he left, Diana turned to me. Do you think he's really changed? I don't know, I said honestly. But I know I have. 5 years ago, I would have needed him to suffer more. Would have taken satisfaction in his complete destruction. Now I understand that the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming so successful that you can afford to be merciful. 1 year later, I walked through the Vivian Enterprises offices on a routine inspection. Employees greeted me with genuine warmth. Not fear or obligation, but respect earned through leadership that valued them. I passed the 12th floor and glanced through the glass walls. Julian sat in his cubicle working diligently, head down. No arrogance. No entitlement. Just quiet focus. He looked up and our eyes met briefly. He nodded respectfully. Employee to CEO. I nodded back. Acknowledgement without friendship. Then I continued walking. Diana was beside me, reviewing quarterly reports. Do you ever regret giving him the job? No, I said. He lost everything and became someone better. I won everything and became someone better. We both learned lessons. His was about humility. Mine was about power. Which lesson is more valuable? I looked out at the Vancouver skyline, the city bright with afternoon sun. His cost him $140 million and 5 years in prison. Mine made me the person my father hoped I'd be. I'd say I got the better deal. This story isn't really about revenge, though that's what it looks like on the surface. It's about something deeper, about recognizing your worth when everyone else tries to diminish it. Vivian could have stayed in that marriage, accepting Julian's narrative that she was incompetent. Millions of people do. They stay in relationships, jobs, situations where they're undervalued because leaving seems harder than staying. But she made a different choice. When someone showed her exactly who they were, she believed them. And then she acted with precision, intelligence, and strategic planning. The real victory wasn't sending Julian to prison or taking back her company. It was her refusal to become bitter. She could have denied him the job and been justified. Instead, she chose the harder path. Mercy without weakness. Second chances without naivety. That's real power. Not in destroying your enemies, but in being strong enough to help them when they can't help themselves, while never forgetting who you are and what you're worth. 5 years after 19 Seconds of Laughter, Vivian owned the penthouse, the company, and a life built on her own terms. Julian got something more valuable than what he stole. He got humility, honesty, and a second chance he didn't deserve but needed. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming so successful that you can afford to be merciful. If the story inspired you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe to Cedar Light Love Stories for more narratives about courage, transformation, and the power of choosing who you become after betrayal. Drop a comment telling me, would you have given Julian the job, or would you have turned him away? Your answer reveals a lot about your own journey. And remember, you're never as powerless as someone else wants you to believe. You're never as small as someone tries to make you. And you're never as broken as betrayal makes you feel. Your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. It's determined by how you treat yourself after they're done trying to destroy you. Thanks for watching Cedar Light Love Stories. Until next time, keep changing your own locks, keep building your own empires, and keep remembering that the person who underestimates you is giving you the greatest advantage you could ever have. Their blindness is your opportunity. Their arrogance is your opening. And their laughter, those 19 seconds of humiliation, can become the fuel that transforms you into someone they never imagined you could be.